Sorry, I need a little snack. I'm hungry. Good morning. Welcome back to the Butter Suspension channel. Today we're going to do a pretty simple procedure, but it can be a little daunting. We're going to remove this fork from the bike. I have folks that want to send stuff in to Butter Suspension, but they're a little concerned about getting the fork off of the bike. So we're going to go through that procedure. It's pretty straightforward. Just going to go in a few steps. Pull off the front wheel, remove the front brake, take off the stem, and keep all the headset parts organized. And then part two, we will basically go in the reverse order, put everything back together, get the headset adjusted properly, get the front brake adjusted properly, and you'll be all set. Let's go. So this is a 2021 Fox 36. This has an adjustable quick release lever. You want to make sure and look up your fork and find the instructions on how to set this pressure. They're different for every model. So same thing with RockShox. It's going to be different for RockShox. But basically, if you grab the code off the fork leg, you can look up the fork on the Fox website, and then it'll give you instructions on how to do actually everything that I'm going to show you. So it's probably a good idea to follow along with the instructions as well as watching the video. But for now, we'll just pull the front wheel off. Quick release, loosen it, unthread it, slides out, drop the wheel. Next step, we're going to remove the brake. I like to pull this off first. It's a 2.5 millimeter. And with this model, the bolt does not want to stay in there, so save it, set it aside. This little plastic piece, you can take it off, but I leave it on because it always stays put. And then on Jose's bike here, these are 5 millimeters. So we're just going to loosen these. You notice I'm trying to keep everything in one piece because when you take these off, sometimes all the bits like to fly away. And then I will take a rubber band, hook it around the bottom, wrap it around the top, hook it around the bottom. Now that all stays put. And then I will take this, because I don't want it to smack in anything and I don't want it to hang down. Now that is on its own, pretty clean. So that's the brake. We got the wheel, the brake. Now we're going to focus on the headset. This one has a 4 millimeter. Now you'll notice there are spacers above, stem spacers below. So when I do this, I like to separate everything in order so that they go back the way that they were. So there's the top stuff. I set it right here. Now I'm holding the fork. You don't want this to drop out. Loosen these bolts. You don't have to totally unthread them, just loosen it until the stem spins. Now same thing, I'm going to take these spacers, set them aside. You'll notice that I got the upper spacers here, lower spacers here, and that is my definition of what goes above and what goes below. Sometimes the wedge inside here will get stuck, so you can give that a smack and it breaks the wedge free. Every headset is different. It's the same basic idea, but they all build them different, so you just kind of got to figure out how these come apart. This one is pretty well greased, so it just comes right apart. Now same thing, I'm going to take this off and set it that's next in line. And because the bearing comes away with it, I'm going to take this bearing and set it aside over here. There's the fork, got it off. Before you set it in, if you could be so kind as to clean off all the grease, I would really appreciate it. I mean, I'm going to clean the grease off anyway, but
help me help you.
Okay, we're going to reinstall the fork now. Anytime I take a fork off a bike, unless it is a brand new bike, there's always going to be dirt in the headset. It's mountain bikes, it's the way it is. So I've pre-cleaned the lower bearing, I've pre-cleaned the fork. You have cleaned the fork before you sent it to me, right? And then I will just get rid of all the old grease. You can see there's some dirt here. Just wipe all this out. If there's anything up here, this one's actually pretty clean, but I'll wipe all that out. Then we're going to take the fork. You want to grease between every contact surface on a headset. Bearings don't like to sit nicely without grease. And then I'll also put a bunch of grease up in here. Not a ton, but again, contact surfaces. Clean bearing. Bearings are directional. They go one way, not the other. Turn the bars, because whenever you hang this stuff, they want to flip like that. Stay. Headset top cap. Sometimes these are multiple pieces, so make sure you get the order right. This one, the King Creek, it kind of all stays put. Because I set these aside in the correct order, these are the lower headset spacers. Your stem. Hold that in place. Top spacers. There should always be a gap between the top of the top spacer and the top of your steer tube. It will not adjust properly unless you have that gap. Preload top cap. Thread this in most of the way. We're going to adjust this after we get the wheel installed and the brake set up. Doesn't have to be perfect, but you can see now it's not going anywhere. So I'm going to hold this tight. Take off my rubber band, that way I don't lose any of my little bits. Brake lines go inside the fork leg. If you put it on the outside, it doesn't affect brake performance, but there is the very slight chance that if you crash and you smash on your brake line, you can cut the brake hose. If it's inside the fork leg, that's almost impossible. So, start these bolts off. I'm going to get this most of the way on, but not tight, because I'm going to adjust it after I get the wheel in. Plastic hose guide. Again, this is a 2.5 millimeter. This one I'll just make sure is where we want it, and I'll tighten it off. Axle should have grease on the threads and a tiny bit right here. These things bind when you get enough water in here. You don't need a ton. Anything more than what's on here will just get smeared off anyway. Load the wheel. Tighten this according to manufacturer's directions. This one's preset, so that's done. Now, I'll grab the front brake at the lever. That way it's not perfectly centered, but it's pretty much centered on the rotor. And I won't crush these yet. I'll just give them a good snug. See if it's where I like them. If I don't hear the rotor rubbing, I'll still double check to make sure that the rotor is in the right spot, and that thing is actually perfectly centered. Doesn't always happen like that. Then I'll make sure these are properly tight. Now, headset adjust. I always like to do this in the air. You can do it on the ground, but I really prefer to do it in the air because I can test by sound to see if the headset is loose or tight. So, just to give an example, you can hear that rattle. literally just turn this. Once the rattle goes away, that's as tight as it needs to be. Anything more than that and you're crushing the bearings. Anything less than that and your headset's loose, and then it's gonna make a bunch of noise, and it has a really weird feeling too when you're riding. So that's where I want it. Then I'm gonna center the stem on the front wheel. This is easier to do while you're sitting on the bike, so I'll pull the bike down. Keep in mind, everybody's idea of center is different. I'm not kidding. So if you don't like the way that it looks when it comes back from the shop, you can certainly adjust this on your own. So I just kind of, looks pretty good. Get these snug. Every stem has different torque values here, so a lot of times it's printed on the stem. Go ahead and look that up. Click them off with a torque wrench, especially if you have a really lightweight fancy stem. But that's it. You're good to go. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.